Today we've got an S.P.S. Pantera, which is a 2011 made in the Philippines and imported by Metro Arms. Before we get into the video, normal backstory, not a cop, no background in the military. I actually work for gun companies, so I buy different guns. This is a gun that I personally purchased, and I like to review them just to show you the perspective of somebody who works in the industry and let you know what my thoughts are on it. I don't poo-poo guns typically because every gun that sells, I think, has a purpose. If people are fans of them, there's a reason, so I try to point those out. But just give kind of a behind-the-scenes thoughts of someone who works in sales and marketing. So getting onto the S.P.S. Pantera, this is a weird review and a weird gun. First, because there's not a lot of these that I've actually seen being sold in the States. I bought this gun because I started doing some USPSA competitions. I am an extremely average shooter. I'm like the most average of average shooters. So I was shooting limited. And if you don't know about limited, it's really dominated by CZs and 2011. So I was shooting my Tri-Arc, and I kept on getting beat by everybody, just about. And I was looking around, I'm going, what the heck's going on? And everybody's shooting 40 Smith & Wesson while I'm shooting 9mm. And they started talking to me about power factor. So basically, when you're shooting competition, if your gun makes a certain power factor, which is based on the grain of the bullet and the speed, it's a calculation, you get better scoring. So obviously I thought, you know what, if I went to 40 caliber, the dumbest round ever made, I would obviously beat everybody else because that's the reason I'm sucking. So I went and I bought a 40 caliber, and it turns out, no, I'm just super duper average. So anyway, getting into the gun, I was looking at different 2011s because I wanted something that fit all the holsters that I currently have. And I looked at Atlas Gun Works and saw $5,000. And I'm going, you know what? For something that I do every other month and I'm not good at, that seems like overkill. So I found the cheapest 2011 that was 40 caliber. S.P.S. Pantera is the only one. So kind of tough to find them. I found one in the entire country a year ago. I bought it and got it, and I'll just tell you what my thoughts are. So first off, it's a 5-inch gun, bull barrel, which is pretty common for competition guns. The bull barrel, like they do on the staccatos now, it adds a little bit more weight up front, which is where you want to mitigate recoil. And when you're shooting 40 major, I hate 40 caliber, but when you're shooting 40 major, there is a little bit more recoil, so having that extra weight does help on there. The gun, it's finished with hard chrome, polished flats, and then it looks like some type of a Cerakote, but I don't think they sprayed Cerakote and then actually rubbed it off. So I have no idea what the black coating is on it. The gun retails for $1,700, being that it is an import and a distributor product. You typically find them for about $1,600. So when somebody goes to distribution, not in times like this, but normally you can get them pretty cheap. So, a relatively inexpensive 2011, a quarter the price of high-end race guns. So I grabbed it. It's not great. And there's a couple of things on it that aren't great. But before I do that, I'm going to preface it with, I wasn't expecting great. I was going in to find the budget gun, and I got exactly what I was expecting. So even though this gun isn't very good in a lot of ways, I'm pretty happy because I got exactly what I paid for. So I think a lot of people have their expectations wrong when they go in and buy something. They think, well, if they're selling it, it should be perfect, exactly what I want. Well, there's going to be trade-offs. So to get a 2011, for competition shooting, made in the Philippines for $1,600, $1,700 retail, they're going to have to cut some corners. So understand that going in. Now, I will say I didn't know too much about Bull Armory from Israel, and their guns are actually their race guns are more expensive, but their standard 2011s are less expensive, and I've got a couple. I'm going to talk about those later. Those are fantastic and don't suffer from some of the issues that the S.P.S. does. So a couple of the issues just to start off. The finishing on the machining, basically on this subframe, they started cutting it out of a piece of steel, and they got the machining like 90% of the way and said, screw it, it's good enough, let's put it on a gun. So The machining is not fantastic. You can see the machine marks where they start and stop. But once again, it's inexpensive, so I'm not upset about it. And I'm going to start, I know it kind of sucks that I'm starting with the negatives, but it's just the stuff that comes to mind. A lot of metal injection molded parts. So the hammer, the thumb safety, a bunch of the internals are all MIM parts. If you're not familiar with MIM, metal injection molding is just an inexpensive way to make intricate parts without having to machine them. So, you know, these parts aren't MIM'd well. You can have good MIM'd parts and you can have poorly MIM'd parts. And these are pretty poorly MIM'd. But I know that at some point this is going to break. However, they did do some cool things. Like in the hammer, they've got this little lattice in there. And I'm going to tell you, that's not just for looks. That's to make sure that the hammer doesn't shatter over use. So it's a little bit thicker than a normal hammer, and it's got this extra reinforcement. That's probably to prevent breakage because it is MIM. So at some point, I just understand that the hammer's going to break. Thumb safety is probably going to break. But I mean, I can't say it enough in this video. I expected that going in. Also, first time I went out to shoot the gun, I had all kinds of problems because the extractor wasn't fit properly and the ejector wasn't even pinned in. It fell out of the gun. So, you know, it's so funny that happened in the first competition I took it out to. It just would not run. It was just a struggle bus the whole way through. But I wasn't upset because once again, like that's what I was expecting with this gun. So I got exactly what I was expected. I switched to my Tri-Arc, had no problems there. I just had a gunsmith retension the extractor and you know, pin the ejector in there. Now it works great. I shoot Atlanta Arms 180 major power factor ammo, not a problem. Positive side, I will go to the trigger. It is super light. It comes in at 2.6 pounds, which is very, very light. It is super positive, just like all 2011s. The reset is actually a little bit lighter than I want it to be. So when you do the reset, I've had this issue a couple times. I'll get it close to the mic. It's not that loud, and since the trigger is so light, and I don't want to say that volume is the thing, but it's not that positive. So since you've got a very light trigger, I have, like the first time I take it on, the first time I have somebody else shoot it, I let them know the reset's very light. And a lot of times people that aren't used to that will, you know, accidentally fire a follow-up shot on accident. You know, once you get used to it, it's not bad, and I could obviously have that tuned to be fixed, but I'm used to it at this point. Fiber optic front sight, nothing to write home about. It's actually a pretty short tube, so I haven't had any issues with having to replace it. It's the same tube I've had. Bomar style rear for fully adjustable, you know, windage and elevation. Great for competitions. The rear notch is a little narrower than I'd like. I like a little bit of light outside, especially since I'm not trying to, you know, shoot holes in the same hole at 25 yards. Not that I'm even capable of doing that, but I do like a little more light around my rear sights in the notch. Thumb safety, you know, it's your standard 2011 thumb safety. They copied the STI Generation 1 grip in a way. They just took out the double diamonds, and I actually like this. I like the old style STI grips. Obviously could get this stippled, but I just like the way this grip texture feels. It's not too much, not too little. It's like, you know, the three little bears. This is the porridge that's just right. The only problem is they made the holes in a proprietary spot. So I ordered some S.P.S grips because I like this grip module a lot. Tried to put it on a 2011, like a Tri-Arc or a Staccato, and it doesn't fit. The top holes don't line up and the trigger bow doesn't line up exactly right. So, you know, whatever. Like I think it's a cool grip. This monster magwell right here is very nice. Normally on 2011s, because you got a tapered mag and you've got a pretty big opening, you know, magazine changes, finding the hole is not a problem. But sometimes if you're doing it quick, that extra little gap is gonna do a lot. This, if you just get anywhere near the same zip code, it's gonna home right in on the address and go home. It's not even like something that you have to think about. This opening is so big without being an obnoxious piece of metal down here. It's really nice. So this is actually a magwell I would kind of like to have. I'd like to see on a duty gun at some point, but I don't know, maybe it is a little bit too big. But anyway, like I said, this grip does not fit on anything other than SPS's. Now, another thing, magazines. This is the STI magazine. This is the box it came into. Nothing to write home about. It's just injection molded plastic. Stuff's gonna fall out of it. It's pretty Spartan in here, which is fine. They come with 2 magazines. I don't know how many rounds they are. For the 40 caliber, I think they're probably 15 rounds. I don't really use them much because first off, they actually don't fit the mag well too well, which I think is kind of a mistake because this is an SPS mag in an SPS mag well. So sometimes they don't really want to seat. It's super tight to get in there. You're not going to over insert, but sometimes I've had trouble getting those magazines to seat in there. Also, they're competition mags, so I don't know. Someone's gonna have to explain to me why competition shooters don't want their last round hold open. So this has the follower does not hold open on the last round on an empty chamber. So there's those. It comes with 2. I went and got the STI. They're Gen 1 or Gen 2. I forgot what it is, but they're 40 caliber 10 millimeter magazine. It's the same magazine, 18 rounds, fits in no problem, which is kind of a nice feature. You can just do that. Mag changes are no sweat. So overall, I know I've said it a few times in this review that there were things that were wrong with the gun, but I was okay with that because of the price paid. But that's something I can't stress enough, is if you understand what you're getting versus the value, if you understand that you're paying a little bit of a budget, so there may be some stuff wrong going in, I think that's going to help people. Also, when you buy an imported gun like this, customer service on this for the S.P.S. was practically non-existent. I contacted them about the ejector and extractor. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one. So I went to a gunsmith and I paid him $60 to pin that thing and tune the extractor. Now, if I bought something like an Atlas and that had happened, that's another thing too, is even when you have a high-end company that's doing things hand fit, there's going to be some stuff that slides by every now and then. People do the best that they can, but I think giving customer service the benefit of the doubt and giving them the opportunity to fix it is super important. If a company then totally screws you, yeah, blast them on the internet, because making a mistake and then not owning up to it is kind of the worst thing in my book in customer service. So overall, S.P.S. Pantera, I don't know if anyone's even looking for these guns, but it's something that I bought and I'll hold on to for the times that I go do competition shooting, and hopefully that major power factor brings me up to that grandmaster status and I can get all the sponsors and free bullets and get a jersey with names all over it one of these days. For now, I just have to wear whatever t-shirt I've got in the closet.